So welcome, everyone. When we pitched the idea for this presentation, we were thinking like no one is going to be interested in studio culture, so we were hoping for like a smaller, intimate room. And yesterday, when I entered this hall, I was holy moly, like we are going to present in front of so many people. And I see more and more people are coming, so we are a little bit, I wouldn't say terrified, but yeah, we're trying to do our best. So, but honestly, jokes aside, like I think it's great that we can present something in this hall with so many people, because we are going to talk about a very important thing that I think is kind of underrepresented in all of GDCs and other conferences and so on. We talk a lot about designing games. We talk a lot about making games. We talk about designing combat mechanics, UI, UX. We sometimes talk about starting a new studio, but we focus on essentials like how to get the founding, how to start with everything. But we very rarely talk about the culture. And when we started with Elsewhere Entertainment, we had some people experience in making games, and obviously making a new game is always a terrifying thing. Making a new IP franchise is it's an adventure. But we realized that we had experience in different cultures, in different organizations, and we always were working already established cultures. And now we are facing this completely different challenge of we can create our own culture. We can create something, and we can build it from the ground. And it was something that doesn't happen often in your life, and you would like to do it in a proper way, in the right way, and avoid some mistakes. And here we are, me and Megan. We are here not to present, but to represent a hard work that was done by the people on our team from the very beginning. It's not only us, there was as well, Hutch, Edward, Sergey, lots of other Patrick, lots of people who from the very beginning, we're putting a lot of effort into doing that. And what we would like to all of you here to come, from this meeting, it's not about we haven't done everything right. It's more about it's worth effort. It's you need to put some effort. You need to put some time into your building your culture, and hopefully we're going to convince you it's a good thing. Okay, so let's start, Megan.
Since we're a new studio from Activision, we're not yet talking about our project, which means I couldn't use our awesome concept art from the team, and I didn't want to use stock photos of people kind of awkwardly posed in different office environments, because that's a little bit opposite of the vibe of our studio. So please enjoy these renditions of cats in business suits for our title slides. Okay, so a quick introduction before we get started. My name is Megan Starks. I'm the narrative director at Elsewhere Entertainment. I've been in the industry for coming up on 15 years now, and I've worked at a variety of studios, from big to small, indie to AAA, across various genres. And because of that, I've seen the different cultures that you can have at different studios. And the longer that I've been in the industry, what's become important to me, or I start thinking about more and more, is for many of us, we're going to have 20, 30, 40-year careers. And how do we attain that longevity and really reach that milestone of significance? And part of that, I think, is based off of the environment that you immerse yourself in every day at your studio. So I wanted to give a talk on that. And I will let Michał introduce himself and speak to his photo.
So we were looking for me, my photo there, I'm smiling, but I am Polish, and we have Polish smile. So this is my Polish smile. You can believe it's there. And talking about, starting a new studio, I will tell a little bit as well. We're making games, and we try our games to be the best, but there is always a chance to, have a patch or, enhanced edition, DLC, make a sequel or another game. And when you're starting a studio, when you establish a culture, it's a little bit like having a kid. Yes, you cannot at some point say I kind of started it, but I don't like it anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, once you have it, you can't go back.
It doesn't work like that. So the pressure was different, and also it's very important. When you start studio under Activision Publishing, some people say oh, it's Activision. It's you expect this big, Activision company to be we are Borg, you're going to be assimilated. It's not like that. Activision Publishing has a very interesting independent studio model. So It means that under Activision, all of those studios, they operate with lots of autonomy and the way they shape their culture. So in Infinity Ward, Triarch, High Moon, Raven, Beanox, all of the Toys for Bob, all of those studios, they have their unique cultures. So we were part of the constellation of studios, and there is no template. It's not like Activision telling you this is the culture you should establish. You have to decide what's your culture. So when we started that, we built it from ground up with lots of people. There were some very experienced people that used to work together. And there were people who never worked together, and some people that were not even very experienced in the game industry. We had people spread across 2 different continents. Like majority of us are in Poland, but there's still people like Megan and me that are on the other continent. And it was the first day when people started working at Elsewhere Entertainment, before even we had this name, and we decided it needs to be something we spend some time, focus, and make, as you said, the place you would like to stay for years and work in a good environment. Okay.
Okay, so before we get into the gritty details of the presentation, what even is studio culture? Well, it's essentially the environment where you spend a third of your life. That's a lot of time. So we want to make sure it's as healthy and happy of an environment as possible. And in order to do that, we want to shape it into the desired environment, because if you don't, it's not guaranteed what you'll end up with. And we determined that what we think the levers are that you can push and pull to help shape your studio culture are both written and unwritten behaviors, values, your mission, processes, and practices that take place within your team every day. Okay, so now that we know we want to shape our studio culture, where do we begin? Unsurprisingly, from this slide, we just started right from the start. And we were very privileged to be able to do that as a new studio. We wanted to establish the culture before we scaled up massively as a team, because then we could identify problems and address them before they became too unwieldy. We went about it in a planned and organized manner, and it has been a constantly evolving process that Michał will speak a little bit further to.
Yeah, and as well, very important, studio culture always is going to emerge. Just you can be a little bit controlling it or less. You cannot control it fully. And this is some very clever person told me, if you control the culture, it becomes a regime. Culture is something that needs to sustain itself. So the only way we can do it, and again, a very nice metaphor, is like trimming this bonsai tree. It's you essentially are trying to look for, some of those values and behaviors that you would like to, encourage, and you encourage them. You see some behaviors that not going in the direction that you believe your culture should go, and you try to inhibit those behaviors. So it's an ongoing process, and essentially what you would like to have is this beautiful, bonsai tree that, emerges from the process. So, as I mentioned before, we started with this hybrid team, some time ago. It was a norm. It's before we were used to work in one place, but again, pandemic, we learned how to work remotely from different places and, in different way. We were from the very beginning divided, with different time zones, different places, with big cultural differences. And cultural differences, not only people from different countries and so on, but people from different organizations before. And we immediately realized we have some technical issues, communication requirements. So you have people working remotely, how to facilitate communication, how to avoid, siloing, how to make working from home fun. And as I said, for us as well, it was very important from start. Even as we were building a studio based on foundation of very experienced veterans. From the very beginning, we wanted to have a healthy mix as well of people who are new people to the industry. But those veterans are bringing a lot of practices they believe from the previous experiences was the best. Some of them are great, obviously, but there's as well, some of those cultures, maybe were not the best. So it was very important for us to create from the very beginning a forum for people to talk about it, to talk what is good, what they would like to have in the future, what they experienced in the past, and how we can, create this beautiful bonsai of our culture. So it started with something that's, I think, first members of the team remember is that's like the therapy sessions. We were sharing our experiences, and we wanted to start with like what was good and bad, and it mostly ended with terrifying stories from previous, environments, and it was cathartic. We talked about some of those things back then. What we did as well, because we had people with different experiences, with more experience and less experienced people. Sometimes it was not even from game development. Sometimes it was like from school, from university, from other jobs like they had outside of the video game industry. So we tried to identify what there were things that people liked, why they stayed in video game industry, why they wanted to stay in this industry and work here. What were things that they would like to avoid in the future? And this was our starting point. These discussions, and as I said, very cathartic, very emotional, and I hope it was a foundation for the next steps.
Okay, so as we established, when you're building your studio culture, you can't really get away from the human element that makes up your team, right? And as people, we are essentially the sum of all of our experiences, both good and bad. So something that was really important to us, that we wanted to make a core aspect of Elsewhere Entertainment, is that it's a place to recover and flourish. So we want to work with the best people in the industry, making awesome stuff, and we understand that especially the longer that you're in the industry, you can potentially pick up different types of baggage, like maybe you're coming in with a little bit of burnout, or you have preconceptions of, well, it's always been done this way, and I don't know if I want to try it something else. Or maybe, in your previous work experience, school, or your personal life, you've gone through something that you're still kind of managing the fallout of. So with that in mind, we kind of welcome everyone, come as you are, but come to be better. This is a place where you can realize your full potential and wipe the slate clean. It's a two-way street, though, so not only are we providing a safe space for you, but we realize that it's not as simple as, a snap of your fingers. It is a process that can take months or years, and, that's something that we're here to support. So on to our values and mission. These are two of the biggest influences on your studio culture, so it's really important to take a measured hand in setting those. And your values are essentially calling out what you think are the most important principles, philosophies, and goals for your studio. And what that means is in the future, when a decision needs to be made, from big to small, most of your developers will do that in an attempt to realize your values. So we wanted to align on them and make sure we communicated them clearly, right from the start. To do that, we needed to kind of identify larger areas or bucket categories that we think are pertinent to the games industry, which is the team, the players, the product, and the environment.
And when we started, we looked as well, inside of Activision. We looked like, other studios. We looked outside of Activision. We looked like, for example, very well-known Blizzard values. Yes, we have those, the statue with them engraved in the middle of their campus. There's Riot is pretty vocal as well about what are their values. And we were going through those and trying to see how much it's aligned with what we believe should be our values, and as well, how those values eventually shaped their studios and their cultures. Because this is something I will talk at the end about, values are as well pretty dangerous, because you're creating some kind of a creed. You're creating a recipe, and it can be used definitely to create a good culture, but sometimes it can be taken out of the context and weaponized. And I will double click on that later on. So, and outside of values, there's as well something that is what is the mission statement? Why we actually are here, why we want to, join Elsewhere Entertainment, why we would like to stay here, why we're in the industry, and it's the North Star. It's something that we always look at in this direction. It's something that is, engraved in the culture of the studio, and as well, it's us, our ambition, drives our ambition, reminds the team what we aspire for, and it's some kind of uplifting value what we would like to eventually accomplish as a group of people. So again, getting there was a very long process. Trust me, it wasn't the day one we're oh, those are our values, or directors, or this is what we do. It's it took a while. So we started with survey, focus on key values. We brainstormed. Trust me, when we ended with the first number of it was over 20 things. And it's you cannot make 20 values. It's too many. So we were looking at those. We were trying to identify which ones are similar, consolidate, see which values are actually the same thing, just named differently. We were trying to identify the importance of that, what actually are the most important values. We had workshops. We used people from outside of the team to facilitate those discussions because they could look from outside and they had this fresh eye of okay, guys, what are you talking about? It's this is what I hear from you. This is the important thing. So it's big help, not only inside of our group but outside. And again, it was a lengthy process with voting, with polls and external moderation. And as I said, super important thing. Very early on, we realized that every word that you use to define your value could be taken out of the context. It could be used by some people sometimes outside of this context and steer your culture in the wrong direction. And I will give you an example. Again, it's not about our values, but I will give you an example. Even working on this presentation, at some point we're talking oh, we wanted this, culture of it's not us versus us, it's us versus them. And suddenly you say them, and who is them? It's you create an enemy that you don't know who is this enemy, and it's very easy to put anyone in this place. It's it can be another person on the team. It could be someone outside of the team. It could be players. It could be anyone. So if you say it's not us versus us, it's us versus them, suddenly you create a very antagonizing value that could be used in a very negative way. And there are some words that we, when we start thinking about, they're positive, family, but they can be sometimes twisted, and they can create a twisted value. So it's not possible to create values that are not, in some way, people cannot use them in some, negative way, but we put a lot of effort into, crafting in a way that's very difficult to weaponize them.
Okay, so the big reveal. What did we end up picking as our most important values? So these are the things that the team believes in the most for Elsewhere Entertainment, and that is leave a mark, one team, respect each other, respect the player, seek holistic diversity, and progress over perfection. And we'll go into those in a little bit more detail in a minute.
Yes, and finally as well, what is our mission? So it was very strong, resonating from the very beginning. We would like to create places. That's why Elsewhere is it's not only about our studio, it's not only about Elsewhere Entertainment. We would like to create places that our players can immerse themselves. They can, return back to our world and still think about them. So create authentic, imaginative, unforgettable worlds that players can call home. And it was very important for us.
Okay, so leave a mark. This is listed as our top value, and it's really important to us. We're an ambitious team. We want to make the best games in the industry and work with the best people and just do awesome stuff, right? But in addition to, wanting to create a legacy, affecting the industry and affecting players, what I thought was interesting about how we ended up on this value is kind of the why behind it, right? So I think this speaks again to the human condition, which is our existence is finite, and we want to feel that we matter. So, it's not just about earning money to provide for our families, which is hugely important, but we also want to leave something behind and affect society in a positive way. And I think that's really meaningful to the team and important.
Yeah. When we were talking about what we would like to do as a group, I said, I would like to change the world, yes? And it feels a little bit okay, what does it mean? With games? And I'm telling this story, probably here some older people, they have seen Matrix, and when they left cinema, they were looking around, wow, maybe I live in a simulation. It's something weird is happening, it's a glitch. And not only Matrix did it, it was the same with Star Wars. It's I believe I can have, I have Force. After reading, Harry Potter, watching movies, you're going to your local railway station, can I find this hidden, platform here? So this is what we would like to achieve. We would like to create those worlds that when you return back to the real world, you're going to ask yourself a question. Maybe this is the same world. Maybe there are some things that I brought from the game and I can find it in this world. This is the way we would like to change our world for the people who experience our games.
Okay, one team. This is also something that was really highly ranked as super important, and that's the concept that essentially a rising tide lifts all boats, or when you support the individual, the collective benefits. So it's not just about me trying to do what I think is important or cool in the industry, it's about us as a joint effort, and when you succeed, we succeed. So it's really a core aspect of our job that we're constantly supporting each other and achieving our work through collaboration. The similar concept to that is we want to be one tribe, not many tribes, right? And part of how we can accomplish that is by having a shared goal, a shared vision, a shared effort, and shared knowledge. I think the longer you're in the industry, some of you guys are probably familiar with the concept of tribal knowledge, right? So that's where like an individual or a small group knows something about your project or your game or your pipelines that is not broader knowledge across the team. And that can cause issues when they're out sick or unavailable or maybe just don't work well with others. So one of our core concepts is kind of this idea of very freely and jointly share knowledge so that our efforts will be smoother and we can reach that shared goal and vision. And of course we do have more challenges and solutions that we're working on for those, but we'll go into that in more detail later.
Yeah. So what I was always saying is I would like to get to the point when the new member of the team joins the team and asks what is the game vision? They don't have to go to any of the directors, me, Megan, and so on. They can ask someone on the team, and even every person around, they can say I can explain you what's the vision of the game. And this is this one team as well. Another thing is, what is extremely, extremely cool about video games is we have experts from so different fields, from engineering through design and art and narrative. I mean, all of them, when you think about it, we are doing so different things, and our the means of expression are so different. It's so easy to fragment the team into what's more important. Is it more important to tell a story and a nice cutscene, or having more interaction with the gameplay? And I've seen many teams that were torn apart with those discussions, and teams trying to achieve excellence in their fields, but not working together, not trying to achieve something that is holistically, the best game.
Respect each other. So this goes back to the idea of hey, we spend 40 hours a week at work. That's a significant amount of time to be around your coworkers. So who do we want to work with to make that as enjoyable as possible? And we determined that we would like them to be positive, collaborative, committed coworkers. And I also wanted to call out here that we want to make sure they have the autonomy and resources to accomplish their goals, because it's not just about obtaining talent, but you need to maintain it once you're there, right? And part of what keeps your most skilled workers happy is making sure that they're free to do what they're good at. The second aspect of that is no egos. So again, it's not just a individualistic enterprise. We want to be free with many ideas and solutions without being too precious of any one. I think you have a saying that
I mean, it's not my saying. It's Steve Pierce who is saying we should have strong opinions but loosely held, which means we need to have this, we should be invested but shouldn't have too many emotions connected with that. And I think this is really important as well.
I think that was something that was a great learning experience and area of growth even for myself since joining the team. It's kind of this idea of, I think a lot of times to get into the industry, to get promoted in the industry, it's drilled into you that you need to be passionate, throw yourself into your work. And here, we want you to care and be invested and do the best work that you can, but at the same time, we want to facilitate an environment where we can have discussions back and forth or make tough decisions about cutting content or something like that, without it becoming too heated or,
emotional.
Yeah, something, or, too defensive, things like that. And then lastly, I think this one is probably one of the most important points, right? So we want to recognize that every member of the team, regardless of rank or experience, was hired for a reason and is a valuable contributor who deserves recognition and appreciation of their efforts. So it doesn't matter if you're, 30 years in the industry and the studio head, or if you're a college intern here for the first time for the summer. If you're on the team, there's a reason, and we value your work and you matter, and we want to make sure that you have equal voice and acknowledgement of your contributions.
And what's really important here, it doesn't mean that we don't respect experience. what we mean is like people with experience should as well respect people who don't have experience. So if someone is coming with the idea and you have someone who tried it, I don't know, 20 years ago and knows it doesn't work, instead of saying like, no, it doesn't work, forget about it, at least can explain what was their experience. And maybe together they can find a way to solve it, because maybe this experience 20 years ago is no longer relevant. So it's not about like, every, voice is equal in terms of making decisions and so on, which we are going to talk later, but it means that there is respect. Like even every idea should have like, I'm trying to explain like, okay, what I like, what I don't like, and why the things we don't like didn't work in the past. And maybe we can find a way for them to work in the future if we work together.
So similar vein, it's important to us to respect the player, right? Because we're not just developers, but we're gamers too, and we understand how frustrating that can be when you're playing something that doesn't feel like you were considered as much as you should have been in the process. So going back to our leave a mark, we really want to bring something positive to our players' lives. And in order to accomplish that, we need to consider the time investment that we're asking from them in return for the reward they get out of the experience. And another core tenet is, of course, we want to recognize and value the player's intelligence. So when we're making decisions at any point in the process, that's something that we try to look back to and make sure, are we answering this? And then, of course, players are coming from all different backgrounds, cultures, and life experiences, so we need to be cognizant of that as well.
Yes, and this is really important. I think I will speak here for a little bit of experience, maybe of Polish community, not only video games, but as well like we would like our cultures and our lives and our experiences to be represented the best possible way. And I sometimes have seen movies or something that were like this is Poland, and someone was looking like, from Turkey or something, because like no one did a proper research. And this is really important for us. Like the stories we would like to tell, places we would like to create, they have, we put effort into making those places respectful for people around the world, with the details and representation as much as possible.
So along those lines, we would like to seek holistic diversity. So we know from different business and science studies that a variety of viewpoints and experiences will improve our product and our work environment. So from that alone, it's just a great thing to do. But also because we are making a mass market game, we want to seek the largest audience possible, and by default, that will include a diversity of a player base. So in order to authentically represent those experiences and resonate with that audience, we need to have a diverse team.
Yes, and one thing here is like we wanted always to avoid some kind of a silo echo chamber, and and this holistic diversity means that, for example, let's say we are working on first-person shooter, we are going to hire only first-person shooter experts. No, we are working on games that would like to have people that had different experiences in life, different cultures, but as well working on different games, knowing different pipelines, so they can bring these experiences that we don't know. And it was very important for us, like for example, and there are two things. First one is obviously you have candidates. You can look for candidates. You can look for people. But sometimes you need to put an extra effort. And I would tell the stories. Like Megan was hired because at some point I went through like 500 different profiles on LinkedIn looking for someone with this certain skill set, experience, and so on. And again, I think it was a great hire. But it requires effort.
Yep.
And you need to put everything we are saying here, all building this culture, it requires extra effort.
Yep, and I think that also goes for media consumption as well. So making sure we have a variety of options for what movies and books and games do you like to consume? It will make us a better, more well-rounded team. Okay, so the last written value that we settled on was progress over perfection. So this is the idea that we want to have consistent, persistent efforts in order to be successful and accomplish our goals. It's better to start or attempt than to wait for the perfect moment. And slow and steady wins the race. And this is because if you require perfection, either from the start or every step of the way, it can often lead to paralysis and burnout within your team. We much prefer anyone to make an attempt, take a stab at it. We can always revise it, improve it, and move forward. And we try to preference this over wholesale redoing stuff.
And this is one of the probably the worst things I've seen in the industry. And here I will touch a little bit, like there was a Larian presentation on the first day, like iteration, and the thing was like, oh, the first one is quality 30, 40, 60. It's not working like that always. Sometimes I've seen situations like, okay, there was an idea that was 90, but someone said like it's not perfect. And eventually what you ship at the end is the idea that was like 30. Because you went through 10 different ideas. You were abandoning them, trying to find something perfect. And honestly, most of the time, the game at the end was shipped with the worst of them from 10 ideas. And the first one, the second one could be the best. And it's very important for us, like we can identify those ideas early. We can see like if they can grow instead of throwing ourselves on like completely new things and constantly looking for this perfection. And this connects, like what Megan said, like looking for perfection is creating paralysis, but as well, it is one of the things that I think is it's so important that, and we identify very quickly, but we say like it's actually embarrassing if we make a value around it because it's so basic, it's so obvious that we shouldn't create a value about this. Making games, making innovative games, making anything new, anything interesting requires experimentation, requires new ideas, requires trying new things. And most of the time, there is no guarantee those ideas are going to work. Most of the time, they fail. And failure is something that is very negative. Like, this is our, again, human nature. It's like, if we fail, we feel bad about it. So, however, we would like to create a environment, we'd like to create a culture that even if you fail, the surrounding, the environment, no one is using it against you. Because we have seen, and it was one of the most traumatic experiences people had, not only from video game industry, from other places as well, is if you're in an environment that if you fail, it's never forgotten, it's always used against you forever. And we wanted to make sure that we don't have this culture of fear that is paralyzing us. We would like to have what we call no fear culture. And obviously, we would like to avoid some mistakes, but again. Finally, so values are things that we could put there, so like this is what we believe is good, and we would like to do that. But during this process, like long process, we identified there's lots of other things, important things, and it's very difficult to say like this is right and this is wrong. Because for example, and a good example is consensus versus direction. And great example was like finding the name for our studio. It took us forever. And we started with like, okay, asking people like, do you have any ideas? And at the very beginning, everyone was super engaged. We had like, hundreds of proposals. We're voting. And after the third revision, I was like, come on, someone needs to make this decision at the end. It's like, so they wanted at some point a decision, a direction. And there is a spectrum here. The same is with ambition versus work-life balance. It's the same with respect versus criticizing someone's works, because sometimes it's not great. And spectrums of positivity, it can be almost toxic if you go too far. So those are things that are very difficult to say, like, where's the perfect, place? You need, at the end, it means that it's a constant effort. It requires what we call situation of awareness, yes? We knew at the very beginning, finding a studio name, everyone would like to participate, so let's do it. At some point, you feel the team is no longer, engaged. They would like someone to make this decision at the end. So you need to have this flexibility, adaptability in all the moments when you work on the game, on the process, and balance them constantly. So it's impossible to just make them simple values.
Okay, so on to our final, but maybe most important section, and that is our culture committee. So defining our values and mission statement is only the beginning. Now we need to walk the walk. And I just wanted to call a shout out to our awesome culture committee, which is, they really did the majority of the heavy lifting of the entire process of defining our studio culture and helping to maintain that. And without them, we wouldn't have the awesome environment that we do. So what is our culture committee? It's basically a rotating group of superhero volunteers who are, charged with reinforcing our values, keeping us from straying too far from them, addressing feedback across the team, engaging and improving our morale, among other things like, show and tells and swag, which is really fun. So because with great power comes great responsibility, we do ask that people on the culture committee you can do at least a 6-month stint. You can always continue on from there, but it's a little bit of an important investment. And when someone new joins the team, they're always encouraged optionally to join the culture committee so that they're able to provide fresh ideas and affect our culture in the way that they would like to. So just to give you an example, we have a few examples of how our culture committee reinforces our values, which is really important to making sure that our culture stays on track once we've established what we would like it to be. Under our one team value, we do have a challenge that is somewhat unique to the studio, which is the fact that we're geographically distributed. A majority of us are in Poland, and the rest of us are kind of scattered throughout the United States. We also work in a hybrid environment. Some people have an office and some people are full-time remote. So how do we encourage and facilitate open communication, avoid siloing? It's a PvE effort, not PvP within our teams. And protect our work-life balance. If I'm sleeping for the night and someone else, it's their work day, and they send me a message, we want to make sure that people don't feel obligated, to check their phones or answer those messages. And of course, we want to have fun together as a team, making sure we get lots of FaceTime and stuff like that.
Yep. So again, it was from the very beginning known problem that we will encounter. So we decided to have those core hours that the team can meet and exchange, and sync. We wanted to make sure that those meetings are as efficient as possible. So we created proper hygiene and how we record, document all the meetings that happen between different time zones and places. There are weekly show and tells and so on and so on. There's lots of smaller as well, initiatives that we are doing in order to keep this, connection of the one team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just wanted to call out here a couple of things for what makes a work environment really satisfying and fun that we try to be cognizant of and point out are, for example, not just protecting the 2-hour overlap, making sure that those meetings are preserved for meeting with the other team, but also when people are out of office, for their day, they're not obligated to answer, and that's understood completely within the team. And also, managers shouldn't be, messaging their subordinates or other team members because, that can make people feel like they're always on. So we try to think about those things and protect work-life balance in that way. And then the other thing is, working remotely. I think what makes you feel good or happy as a person is the social aspect, right? I want to be with other people and talk about my day. So when we do have meetings, the first 5 to 10 minutes are just reserved for social chat, icebreaker conversations. So even little things like that are really important to us. Another example of a challenge is how do we onboard and make sure that our new members feel included, not just in the culture that we've established, but making sure if we onboard a bunch of people at one time that our culture doesn't take off in a direction overly influenced by a new group.
So, as I there's lots of good practices here, creating proper onboarding documents. We are keeping really well documented, SharePoint and Confluence and all of those things. They're obvious, but as well, I think there are some unique things, and some of them are actually part of the Activision culture that we borrowed, like buddy systems. So, when you join, there is a person that is assigned that is going to help you with some things that very important, but mostly no one thinks about. It's how to, connect to a printer in the office. It's or where is the best place you can go for lunch around the office, or when you work in this work environment, how I can order, equipment if I'm missing something in my work from home environment. So you need those people that can help you with finding those things and finding yourself in this environment. There are some funny things, for example. It's we have Polish people and we have people in America. And it's when someone joins and his name is Grzegorz, we created a whole web page explaining how to pronounce those names, and the other way around. It's some names are sometimes foreign for people. And finally, which is really important as well, and something I'm trying honestly all the time. Every time there's a new person joining the team, it doesn't matter what level, what team, and so on. I'm telling okay. Maybe I'm very busy, but I'm going to find time this week or next week, 1 hour, and I'm going to answer all your questions. I'm going to give you introduction to the project again. Why? Because I would like to, demystify. There is no a mythic group of directors. We're here. We're part of the team. And later on, if you have any questions, you can find them around, or you can ask us as well.
Okay, and so the last example that we had to show you guys is respect each other and in some ways the player as well, based on that result. So we want to facilitate ideas and discussion and address feedback in a healthy way. We don't want to become set in our ways and not be able to adapt and evolve.
And yes, so here are, again, things like flat hierarchy for feedback, yes, which means like we try to encourage people to provide feedback no matter what it's like, if it's me presenting and, and the person is junior person. Some people might be actually, like kind of afraid of that, so we help with anonymous feedback pipelines so we can check things. As well, we try to acknowledge good things, like we have those show and tell. We try to, like say like, you did a great job where it's done, so giving all the credits and so on. So this is really important as well for this, reinforcing those values constantly.
Yeah, positivity and acknowledging and thanking people for their efforts and their good work are really important, so.
Yeah. Okay, so at the very end, just like we already said, like, what I think is the most important here as well, and it's not maybe mentioned here, but probably you already have heard it many, many times. Like, in order to build culture, in order to maintain the culture, you need actually to allocate time and resources. It's not like, oh, culture exists, we hold hands and everything is happening. We have people that have like actually tasks. They have in the calendar like moments when like, okay, this is the coffee time. This is like this is like culture committee meetings and so on. So we are making sure that this is part of your work as well. It's part of your sprint planning. It's part of your time you spend in the work to maintain that. And we are pretty lucky because we could to build it from ground up, but I believe everything that we've learned can be applied as well to already established cultures to like, if you would like to, steer them in some way and improve. And as well, elsewhere, entertainment is going to evolve, it's going to grow. We are going to, hire new people are going to join us, they're going to bring new experiences, new things, and we hope we are going to learn, we are going to grow, we are going to change. The world is changing, yes? The biggest change, pandemic, taught us how to work in a completely different way. Now we have AI, we have who knows what's coming next. And this is going to change the way we work, and obviously it will as well affect the culture of work. So this is what we I think are dedicated to, we believe we're in a pretty good place. It's not like we did everything perfectly. We did a lot of mistakes. We've learned a lot. However, I think it's more about dedication and commitment to like keep this, improvement and spending time. And as I said, like that's important as well. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we have a little bit of time. There was a microphone down in front. I'm not sure. Oh, it's coming out. Okay, so yeah, if you guys have any questions, please come on down and, fire away. Yeah, thank you.
Hey, so thanks for talking about culture, values. I think it's super important. It's like the biggest advantage that we can have, so it's great to see it. I'm curious, how do you approach it on the practical level, maybe, for example, when you're hiring, to make sure that you hire people who are aligned with your values, and then when you have people in the team, how are you dealing with this on the management side?
So I think there definitely, it's two-way street, and this is really important, because like I would like to avoid this thinking like, oh, we are picking people who are the same culture we are, yes? It's very important for us, and I think it was very obvious from the very beginning. We had something that some people were absolutely like shocked with, some kind of radical transparency. So we were like telling them what we were doing. We were showing them what we were doing. We were sometimes giving them feedback during the interview, something like, I didn't like what you said right now. Could you rephrase, for example? So we're trying from the very beginning not to be this kind of like, distant, ivory tower that is making decisions. From the very beginning, enter some kind of meaningful conversation. And even during interview, giving this like, it's fine if you make a mistake when you answer questions. One more thing is, for example, in the interview process, what we are trying to implement is like two-step interviews. And this is really important for me, and I think it was Adrian Henialash who said like, people who are doing things that you ask them for the first time, they never do exactly the good thing. The second thing, after getting feedback, this is when you see the quality of person, that they can take this feedback and implement it. Because there's so many things in the communication that may not go well, even if this is the task for the your task as a part of the interview, you may not communicate it well. Maybe the way the terms are working in your culture versus other studios are different. So we are giving this, 2-round interviews. We're giving you the task. You can answer questions, and then we are asking, okay, can you rephrase? Can you fix? Because we believe then you actually see if we can work with the same, the same culture, which is this improvement, yes? It's about improving, it's about understanding each other, it's about aligning with communication.
Yeah, I also want to add to that, one thing that we do that is interesting, maybe we didn't do at some of the previous places I worked, is we do have a variety of developers with different backgrounds, life experiences, points of view, different ages, and so we try to have a really good mix in our interviews to make sure, like, okay, we're hiring a programmer, let's get an associate narrative designer in there. Do they know anything about what's being discussed? Maybe not, but it gives you a chance to kind of get to know each other better and see, do your values align with ours? Not necessarily personality related, but just like how you do your work and, the things that we think are important to us as a development group.
And as you mentioned, values influence our decisions, right? This is why you want them. So if you have someone whose behaviors don't align with the values, a team member, maybe someone who's not respecting others, how do you react to that?
So definitely, again, it's about giving feedback, giving someone a chance to, change the way they behave and adjust. But again, at some point, there are moments when you depart with someone who is, not fitting to the culture, yes? Because, we are trying to give people as much as possible opportunities to grow, to learn. As Megan said, like, sometimes those behaviors are not something you can control. Those are traumas that we brought from the other company. Those are things you don't understand. You have to, so we're giving this time, we're giving explanation. We are not, as I said, we don't want to create fear culture. Yes, we don't want to, oh, you made this mistake. We understand. Yes, we made mistakes as well. So I think this is really important, giving time. And yeah, it's not just a week.
Yeah.
We are talking months, sometimes even more.
I mean, I also think it's on your manager to work with you over the entire year, part of your regular check-ins and performance evaluation and stuff like that. And also on an individual level, we have to consider that we have a variety of personalities on the team, and sometimes there can be friction. And it's part of our job to learn how to work with those people and make adjustments on both sides to say, how can we improve or make this the best working relationship between the two of us, even if normally we're not people who would, go out and grab drinks together or something like that. Because if you don't, you could potentially miss out on really valuable, unique, awesome contributions from a person because you didn't find the best way to work with them.
Yeah, and one of the best, I think, compliment I've heard is your team is one of the most weird bunch of individuals, and I don't have any idea how they work together in such a good way. Yeah? They're so different.
We make it work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you say something about creating a culture committee? How was the process?
So it was a grassroots part. It's it was discussions with people who joined. It's and they realized very quickly. It's you need people somehow. This is part of their job, yes. And it shouldn't be leadership. It should be people from the team. And it was as well it's a lot of work. It needs to be, dedicated. So again, it was, I think, I don't know, Hachai's idea, or yeah. Can you answer the question? As I said, we are representing here. People who created this culture are sitting over there as well, and they sometimes have better answers than I have.
Yeah, it's also nice too because I think, in a way, it's not just everyone looking to leadership of what you think matters the most and you enforce it to everyone else. The culture committee is kind of Knights of the Round Table to the King or something, where it's we're all together and supporting each other, but they also act as a check and balance. So if there's team morale feedback that comes in, it's their initiative and they're empowered to address that. Sorry, I didn't know if Hutch was gonna. Can we hear you from back there? No.
I'll tell you. With the culture committee, I woke up one day, and it was there, and it was working, and it was. It's it was working, it was perfect. And people from this culture community, sometimes I have a presentation after this, oh, you shouldn't say that this way. Next time, you do better. Yeah. And I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to, get this feedback and improve.
Okay, thanks.
So they're holding us accountable as much as we can. No other questions? Or?
Come on.
Oh, okay.
Hi. Well, first of all, thanks for your beautiful and amazing sharing your experiences with us. I've got a question regarding hiring people from different parts of the world. So currently, many companies, including Activision, require some positions to be in the office. So how do you approach this right now, in this new branch, in this new company here? And is there any metric or any underlying concept that you have to measure how necessary it is to have people in the office, or are you always open to remote work?
We have those metrics. I think, again, I don't want to give you a perfect, proper answer because, again, I don't exactly know them. We are trying, as I said, we are right now mostly focused on establishing our, studio here in Warsaw. And there's definitely this, hybrid work that we, and by the way, people want to go to the office. It's what's actually really interesting is after a pandemic, it was the pressure from the team that they wanted to have an office and they wanted to meet and they wanted to have a place to work. And we don't force them to be whole week, and many people just stay there for a whole week. So we didn't encounter the problem of other potentially places had with people that prefer to work from home and so on. We had the other problem so far. But as I said, we are trying to, as well. There are different personalities, different job families, different people, and there are those metrics, and we're trying to keep within Activision metrics because we are a big company, and we operate in such a way.
Anyone else? Okay, I just wanted to say thank you to Digital Dragons for having us. It's my first time in Krakow, and it is a beautiful city, so thank you.
Yeah.